Good morning, everyone. Welcome to American Scouser's morning coffee. And I got a Daffy Duck going this morning, by the way. Or
Geez.
tea. American Scouser. You got your water ready, or what we got
Oh
going
yeah,
this morning? Oh, hell yeah. It's the
I got my water. I got everybody in my neighborhood mowing their lawn at the same time. I'm up and
Really? On a Thursday?
yeah.
Are you like in a retirement neighborhood? What's going on there?
I, I wish I had an explanation for it. I'm just trying to not have that buzzing in my brain for the rest of the day more than anything.
What's so we have basically I figured we kind of like go through instead of like going through specific games, we just kind of like do a quick recap of like the groups now that the Champions League is over. Opponents are known. If you did not see 85 different posts on Facebook yesterday, because everybody was announcing it like they cured cancer or they freaking like solved a
Yeah,
big mystery or something like that. But we'll go through those teams. You can give your preference and we'll get like the audience's preferences as well. I'm guessing everybody's gonna lean towards Porto, but we'll see how we go. Okay, so we'll start with our boys. I think you look at the group, you knew it was going to be Napoli and Liverpool fighting for it. I mean, I think in terms of who advanced, who went to Europa was pretty like obvious. It was just like, is it going to be Liverpool or Napoli kind of thing? Well, there you go. Alan is with us as well this morning and not feeling like crap as a change. So that
hey,
that is a good
step
deal.
in the right direction. Let's go.
That is in the right direction. Um, any surprises? I think once you saw, you got to figure like if you look at that, the last five thing. Once we got spanked in Italy, we kind of got our act together, at least on the Champions League side. But given the form overall and how we started, I think it pretty much ended as well as it could have. I think the biggest shocker is how poor Rangers was.
Yeah, I was going to say how little of a fight Ajax put up in a
That's
lot
true
of those
too.
matches was a big shock for me. I think there would have been one of those things where they would have taken at least one of the games from us or Napoli in Amsterdam. Not super shocked at Rangers getting beat six times. Maybe getting beat as bad as they did six times is a bit of a worry for them, but I didn't see any of the Scottish teams, and we'll get to the other one later on, really doing anything. Yeah, but I thought it was going to be Liverpool and Napoli 1-2. However way you were going to sort it, it wouldn't have really bothered me if that was your prediction. I really thought Ajax would have made it a bit more interesting between the two, but not really. That one was probably the most straightforward of them across all of the groups. To be fair,
Yeah, I mean, you're right. I didn't think of that. I guess Ajax, you thought, I mean, you would think at least they would get, I mean, they basically just beat Rangers. That was it. It's like they
yeah,
couldn't even get that. So, and yeah, for Rangers, and like you said, like we'll talk Celtic as well. I mean, Scottish teams pretty much show that they are not really ready for this whole Champions League thing you guys got going over here, all kind of deal. Because yeah, it looks, especially Rangers, I think looked extremely, extremely poor. I mean, 2 goals scored and 22 conceded is pretty brutal. And yeah, I mean, it almost looked like in most cases. So I mean, sometimes you have a team that doesn't have a point, but they were in every game and they battled every game. You really can't say
yeah.
that for Rangers. So this Group B was definitely an interesting one
Oh yeah,
because I don't think anybody called this. I mean, seeing Simone just freaking crash out of Champions League and Europe altogether is a joy within itself. Um, Leverkusen kind of like squeaks in the last second into the fifth spot over there. Club Bruges started hot, almost like blew their load early, and then that kind of Porta comes back. I think when I looked at this group, you almost thought Madrid will go through, and then it would be Porto and Leverkusen fighting for it. At least that was my initial, like, beginning of the season impression. But Porto and Club Brugge pretty much run away with this one. Shock! Are you still with us? Can you hear me, or did you freeze? The mowers have gotten in the way of Trevor. They're causing some kind of static over there. So we'll have him like fix that up, and then we'll have him like reach. Ah, there he is back. Is it the mowers that's interfering with the broadcast?
I don't know. Maybe they hit a generator or something. I was like, follow the sound of my voice. I don't know if either way.
So what do you think about that Group B? I mean, apart from the joy of Atletico Madrid, shock with Club Brugge, or more shock with, or did the truth come out at the end where they started to kind of fall apart but just hung in there because they had the lead?
Yeah, and I think going into it, it was definitely Atletico and Porto were the two teams that you really thought were going to come through in that one. And Leverkusen, they usually kind of have a good account of themselves in Champions League, but they were kind of a team in turmoil this year, so you didn't really have the highest of expectations. And Bruges just came out of nowhere and got off to a hot start and was able to hang on for dear life. So that's good on them. That's good progression for them as a club. Porto is a team now sneaking into that top spot that really has become fodder for everybody that is eligible to face them. And we'll talk about those matchups once we get through all these groups.
Next up is Group C, where probably when it came up, Victoria Pilsen is like, fuck my life.
They put up more of a fight than fucking Rangers did, though.
I guess, yeah, right. I mean, and this is what I was kind of more expecting. Even in the games they lost, a couple of them, at least at home, they've been in them. They've scored here and there and stuff like that. So, but Barcelona is the one crashing out. You would think, or you would expect, with all the signings they did and the shenanigans with the finances, they would kind of keep advancing. This has to really hit him in the pocket as well. But Inter is a good team. We knew that from last year, and they make it second. And I'm not even gonna mention Bayern, who just basically cruised.
Yeah, Bayern was kind of an easy pencil in, just for the way they play in Champions League and the way they've kind of handled both Inter and Barcelona in the competition over the years. And Pilsen, credit to them, they tried.
Yeah. They showed up.
But yeah, Barcelona going out after all of the movement from this past summer has to sting. Going into Europa for a second straight year, you could tell last year they didn't want any part of that competition. They just when they dropped down, they could not have given less of a shit. And I have a feeling that we're going to get a similar type of thing this year, instead of trying to go win it and kind of save some face. I just think they don't have the time for it. They don't have the care for it, and they'll just kind of let it go. And the team that snuck not really snuck through, that doesn't give enough due credit to Inter. They're a team that if I was a first place in a group team, I wouldn't necessarily want to go face them in Italy in the second leg of it, because that's going to not be a very fun time for you.
No, it's not. I mean, they're a tough team. They got a lot of talents. I mean, we dealt with them pretty well last season. That was last season's Champions League, right? But yeah, I mean, they have a lot of like good talents over there. And that group, you could tell it was going to be whatever Inter Barcelona. That week 3, week 4 was going to determine everything, which it did. Alan says Bayern is the most likely tie in the last 6 in Champions League with a 40% chance. Is that mathematics? Is that like FIFA math, or like, I don't understand how that's like, why it's a higher chance than the other ones? I thought, well, I mean, apart from is that the money quotients like that increases it compared to the other ones, or what? But Group D, we
CBS
talked
is
about
coming in saying
Group D. We talked about it yesterday.
Yeah.
The whole how that unfolded. I think at the end of the day, it kind of unfolded as you would expect, right?
I probably would have beforehand. I had Sporting over Frankfurt, even with Frankfurt having won the Europa League last year. It was just something where I think Sporting was in better form, and they kind of had a lot more players firing at the right times than Frankfurt did. They were kind of sputtering in the league a bit, but they've come on lately, and then in this competition, they won all the games they needed to when they needed to, and they got that final day win and got through. Spurs, we talked about that, how Marseille was unaware that they needed a draw, which still boggles my mind.
That does
And
bug on. I mean, kind of like yesterday too, and we'll talk about that when we get to Benfica, because you would think. I know in most cases you don't want to interfere in the middle of the game, but you kind of almost got the feeling that even when it was 4-1, these guys did not even realize that, they needed 2 more goals, because when they scored the 5th goal, they celebrated like it was just another goal. They weren't like, okay, 1 more kind of deal. They got it anyway, but still. This group over here, Group E, kind of, I feel like unfolded exactly as you expected it to. Chelsea does lose Chilwell yesterday, though. So he's possibly out of the World Cup because it is a hamstring issue. And so that's a loss. Normally you would be like, well, they got Cucurella, but he's been kind of like, yeah, since he's joined them over there. That's like, I like a really couple of bad games. So that's going to be interesting moving forward, but nothing unexpected here, right? Kind of like as originally scheduled.
yeah, and this was another one of those groups where you kind of, the way everybody put it on the table, it came out that way, both in like the results and in the final standings. Yeah, that Chilwell and Son going down for their respective teams is massive for both the clubs and their countries in the World Cup. We'll see. I think Son has a fractional chance to come back. He may be looking like Osimhen with the face mask, but Chilwell, it's not looking great for him. And
Yeah, you got to figure a
they're gonna have to
hamstring.
run. Yeah, they're gonna have to
Not
run
a good
Cucurella
deal.
out there, who's getting subbed off at like the 30-minute mark every game lately, which is not a great sign of confidence from your former and current boss.
So let me ask you this, because I know like Carragher was kind of complaining about the fact that, like the timing of the World Cup and injuries and stuff like that. But I know normally you have like a 2-3 week gap, right? So I think you are losing that. So it does kind of suck, but ultimately, like if something happens in the last week of the season and stuff, when everybody's really having to go for it, if anything, I would complain that some players might not really fully go for it right now to secure their trip to the World Cup. Whereas at the end of the season, the stakes are so much higher. So everybody's really going full speed unless it's already sealed. Like you're not going to win and you're already in the top
like
4. Right?
11th.
You're like, you're like 8th or so. Yeah, exactly. So do you think it's like a huge factor? Has it made this World Cup even shittier? Because now we're missing a bunch of players as well.
It's one of those things where each format has its strengths and weaknesses. With this one now, you're getting guys in mid-season form. They're all warmed up. You don't have to worry about that kind of like 1 or 2 game ramp up in a 3 in a 3-game group where you're going to see some probably crappy performances from guys you wouldn't normally expect them from. But yet the trade-off is you are going to get some guys who are very tired, and some guys are going to get injured at the most inopportune times. We still got 2 more games to go.
Yeah.
And it's one of those things where Southampton is on that brink of being a bit on the struggle bus. And we'll talk about that game, obviously, closer to that. But there's a lot more time for guys to get injured, and you're like sitting there going, man, this is who are we gonna see go down this weekend? Who are we gonna
Yes,
see
it's
go
more like
down
who's
midweek?
next. Exactly. Yeah, I get the same
Yeah.
feeling too. And I think that's because like anything that happens now that is a couple of weeks automatically almost semi rules them out, because it's not a guy that you want to take on the trip that is not healed. And hopefully, I mean, maybe if you are a top team where you feel like you're automatically going to be there, you're like, hey, I come sit for the first 3 games. By the time we get to the second round, that buys you like an extra week and a half or whatever. But in most cases, like, Son, I mean, you got to figure that team really players like Son and Mo and stuff, when it's their national team, they're kind of like the centerpiece, and that, like, everything kind of is revolved around them, and the gameplay is around them. It's kind of like a shitty ordeal for when you're missing that guy from an injury. Group F. I would say the same as the other one, kind of like how it was originally drawn out. Celtic puts a bit more of a fight, like we said, than Rangers. I mean, shit, at least they got points. And I think this is what I was talking about. They were more in the games in most cases. I mean, yesterday's game kind of like screws up their stats a lot, but overall, they were a bit more in the games than Rangers ever was.
Yeah, they had a lot of those where they kind of, in like a boxing term, like they stuck around for about 6 rounds, and then when it got past the point of their normal training, it kind of fell apart for them in a lot of games, and that's kind of just where the Scottish League is at this stage of the game, and that's something that they have to look at, and where their investment is coming from and what they're going to do to improve those things. It's not to say that these teams have bad players. They just don't have enough depth. And when now you have 5 subs, and Madrid can throw out 5 guys fresh as a daisy at the 70th minute who are better than pretty much every single person on your team. You just don't stand much.
That's what I think it really stings. And I know when we were talking about the, like 5 subs, does it help? Does it hurt? And stuff like that. I think that's a good point. I think this is a tournament where you kind of see the difference. Yeah, I mean, Madrid or even us, like in the most top teams, just roll out 5 guys that play for their national team. And whereas like Celtic is like digging deep in the back to pull out a guy that were like, hey, he came back from injury, just throw him out there, kind of a deal. So yeah, I hear you. This one, honestly, if Sevilla was not as in big of a mess as they are, I think Group G, at least for the second spot, would be a bit more interesting. But with the mess that Sevilla are in, Dortmund kind of, not that Dortmund is in the best shape right now, but they got enough talent to kind of like keep him going. That I think the key matchup, kind of like the other group we were talking about, was what would happen, like Inter Barcelona kind of a deal. What's going to happen between Dortmund and Sevilla, and Dortmund kind of go through.
Yeah, in Sevilla, and we talked about it with like Atletico, it just these kind of second level Spanish teams, and sadly we have to, like, in terms of Champions League, throw Barcelona and those second level Spanish teams this year. It feels awkward to say, but it's a statement.
It feels good to say.
Yeah, they're doing fine in the league, but in the Champions League, they just never got out of park. They didn't even get into first gear. They never took it out of park. And Sevilla was one of those teams where, and we talked about it when they were playing Dortmund, I think a couple of weeks back, how normally you just kind of have those games where your guys aren't scoring and then you try to just get like defensive. And Sevilla just kind of turned into like Atletico light, where instead of trying to just defend and be compact, their strategy was just to kick you every time they got within a yard of you. As like, a FIFA player that just only knows how to slide tackle. And I think that really messed with them overall, because you get that thing where you're trying to play sloppily because you're pissed off or you're in bad form, and then it just goes to everything where you finally start to get those chances, and or like that part of your brain has shut off because all you've known the 2 games prior is just you'd rather kick a player than kick a ball. And
I don't even know why. I mean, I know they were struggling, so I don't know if they felt like that was their only shot, like be really defensive, and they're like, oh, Atletico Madrid is doing it every year, why don't we do the same thing, kind of a deal. And it just did not pay off, because it's a team that usually plays, I mean, they do play and keep the games like pretty cagey, like anytime I watched them in the past as a style, but never to the extent of like Atletico. And yeah, they went more that way than the other way. And with Dortmund's open attacking style, that kind of like suited them as well. So, I mean, I guess I would much rather see Dortmund advance in some
Yeah.
ways because of like they're like a lot better to watch in another game. But same can be said about this team. That was crazy yesterday. I think that was the sixth tiebreaker that made Benfica like kind of progress because they go by obviously points and then like record against each other, then the goal average and the freaking like goals scored. And I think it was the sixth one, which was away goals scored. So much for the away goal thing going away, I guess, huh? And
Yeah.
then these guys make it through. I think
Just when you thought it was dead.
it comes back. The one thing that didn't come back, and I think is like really shocking. And I know they have a lot of injuries and stuff, but the mess that is Juventus, where they were almost knocked out of Europe in this thing, is probably like the most shocking ordeal out of the whole thing.
Yeah, because kind of when you looked at it, there was the two quote unquote groups of death, where it was Inter, Bayern, Barca, and then Juve, Benfica, PSG. Three teams that all really you could have just flipped a coin and who was going to make it through. And a lot of people kind of like poo-pooed PSG going in because they're like, yeah, they put all this money, but there's all this like internal strife. Will they had no problems. They're like Benfica was the only team that gave them any bit of stick whatsoever. And then Juve, they lost to Maccabi Haifa. It was one of those things where this is going to be a season to forget. I think they'll have a similar run through the Europa League of just like Barcelona. Go there, do the old Abe Simpson, put your hat on the thing, pull it off, and just walk back out.
Like at least for like Maccabi Haifa, I mean Barak, who's one of our writers on the website, he does the corner taking quickly, like his quick post-match articles, and he's a big fan of it. And I know, like, obviously listening from him and his reactions, they were just happy to be there. And they probably, I mean, them getting 3 points and that win just meant the world to them anyway. They were pretty much like, mission accomplished. We can die happy now, kind of a deal. And heck, honestly, it's more like when those teams go, I mean, I know from like, like Turkish teams, when you go with zero hope and the team is just playing like with zero hope and say whatever we get, we get. I don't know if that like lack of pressure and the comforts kind of helps, because the moment they were like, hey, wait, we can get something against Benfica and stuff too, and kind of like at least stay in Europa, the moment you cranked up that expectation level, it just went to crap. And then they just like, I mean, yesterday's game, for example, they just looked extremely lost. And Benfica is a good side. It's a side where so we'll talk about that next. So it's one of our potential matchups: Benfica, Porto, the Portuguese brothers, our nemesis, Real, and Bayern. So out of these four, who is your preference? Because normally, I mean, I'm assuming everybody is gonna say, like, in terms of ease, the Portuguese teams on paper are going to be easier. I feel like Benfica is a lot more dangerous than Porto, because especially for a team like us, I mean, everything is going to be different come February. I think, we're talking about injuries going into the World Cup. God knows what's going to happen at the World Cup when the stakes are really high and stuff like that, and how many games those guys are going to play, all that kind of stuff. So come February, it's going to be a whole different thing we're going to watch. But it's a team, as Liverpool, we're a team who likes to concede first. And Benfica feels like, to me, is not a team you want to concede against first, because they're brutal, like against, like when they counter, and they can really kick your ass, which is what they were doing yesterday.
Yeah. Of the four, Porto is far and away the one that I would pick. They have attacking prowess, but their defense is still never going to be even in the same ballpark as Benfica's on an overall scale. I know last year with Benfica, it kind of turned into a goal fest over two legs, but I think that was more they realized with how we were playing, and then they kind of just needed to abandon being defensive and just try to outscore us, and that was the way they were going to do it. Whereas Porto, I think they're main drive is to always try to outscore you, and it leaves
Yeah.
them susceptible to
They're almost
counters.
too cool for school. They don't want to do this defending thing. Yeah. But so I mean, Alan gave the 40% to Bayern because it does feel like a great Mane coming home kind of a BS scenario, which would nauseate me to death, like hearing about that for freaking like months. What do you think out of Real or Bayern? I guess which one you would prefer? I see people like I never understand this thinking. So somebody come on, please explain it to me that they're like, you're gonna have to beat everybody anyway. So like, let's start knocking them out. No, I mean, take the easiest route and win in the final. Isn't that a lot easier? I mean, like, and not to mention, you're still going to be playing Premier Leagues. Isn't it better to go to Porto and, I don't know, win 3-0 away or something like that? And then, well, I guess we're home the first game, right? Or like finish the deal at home and then away, you can kind of like get people off the bench or whatever. Isn't it a lot easier than fucking going against Real for like 180 minutes and like get that challenge in?
I don't care about Mickey Mouse titles. I don't care about not beating the best. Please, the easiest draw, the path of least resistance, I will accept that for my supported clubs every time.
Preach.
And there's some times where you're sitting there and people are like, oh, well, you only beat this team and they had to go through this. And I'm like, Villarreal had to go through the gauntlet last year. And so the fact that we faced them in the semifinals and they were the quote unquote lesser team of it, the fact that they beat the bigger teams and kind of took them off our plate, I don't know why we should be so turning our nose up to them. But either way, I think Bayern and Real is basically determining whether you want to die by getting set on fire or drowned. I don't prefer either option. I'd say Bayern just because we have a track record of beating them in the past. It's not going to be a fun time. It's going to be very stressful, but at least, I don't know, we don't necessarily have their number, but we got at least a way to add up to having their number. Whereas Real, we just forgot how to do simple arithmetic and we can't get it at all. If they're having a down year, they're at their peak and we're at our peak. It just never seems to go right in like at least the past 5 years.
Yeah, and then the thing in the second round is going to be like PSG is going to probably match up more than likely with one of the English teams, you would think, right? And there's going to be like that PSG is going to create like an interesting matchup, I think. And like we talked about, the two Italian teams, Milan, and like the both Milan teams, like could be like tougher matchups. So it's going to be interesting to see who matches up with who there. But I agree. I mean, at the end of the thing, people remember how many times we won it, the years we won it. And I mean, we remember the runs, but I mean, the one we won in Istanbul, I really don't remember a lot of who we beat along the way as much. Maybe it's because I'm getting old and don't remember shit as much. But, you know, at the end of the day, people remember who won what year, and they don't remember who they beat in the quarterfinals that year. It's just a matter of
you remember the moments. And, somebody could probably pick the Olympiacos game out of a lineup if it comes down to it. But everything else in between, you're just like, no, it's survive and advance.
Yeah, I just, you remember that goal, you can visualize everything, but that's basically, I mean, to me at least, that's pretty much it for the most part from that run. Just, it was not likely. We were not a team that was, especially like with our league form, that was meant to be or expected to be there kind of deal. But, and yeah, on paper, I remember like at the time, like Milan was, I mean, the best of the best. I mean, you still look at that, like, holy shit, how did we pull that off? But yeah, I agree. I don't understand what this whole concept of, and you know what the funny thing is, like everybody's like, it's the Champions League. They're all tough teams. Okay, then let's take lesser of the tough teams. Let's take Porto. Let's take Benfica. If they're all tough, let's take the easier tough.
All right, they're all tough, but this is it. Okay, equate it to like fighting. Why would I want to fight a wrestler if I'm bad at wrestling? Well, that's the thing. I don't. there's there's something where there has to be that bit of self-preservation at some point too. Like, why would I not want to face the team that they've beaten countless times over and over and done so handily? Why would I not want that over the team that? And I think I saw it in the Discord, like Matoush was talking about how people are like clamoring for Madrid because they want that revenge. I'm like, get that fucking revenge in the final then or something if you want. Let's get that far.
I mean, we saw kind of how that turned out. Obviously, the goalie had to stand on his head, but who cares? I mean, I don't care about that stuff. I'd rather
not get kneecapped in the round of 16. If I'm gonna
let PSG, it won't happen, but let City match up with PSG in the next round, eliminate one of those guys that way. I mean, it's just I'd rather have these teams knock themselves out, and then we kind of cruise, jump over the rubble, and just keep walking towards the wine. If nothing else, I think people don't understand that all these minutes add up. It's just not a matter of, like that game, that matchup. I mean, the 180 that you spend against a tougher team that takes a lot more out of you comes back to haunt you. We saw that at the end of last season, how tired this team got and it kind of how it affected our play. So why would you want that? Why would you not want a team where, I mean, going back to like every team is tough. Yeah, none of these are going to be like you're going to draw them and we're like, we got this, don't even need to show up, play the kids kind of thing. Everything's going to be a challenge at some extent, but you have a better shot at getting a very favorable score against Porto and Benfica and maybe rotating a bit for the away game. I almost feel like you wouldn't rotate at all at any given point against a team like Real and Bayern and stuff like that, knowing what they're capable of. So
you wouldn't be able to.
Exactly. It's just like I don't know, like an internet warrior kind of thinking. I hardly believe like these guys are like, damn it, we got Porto, not Real at home. If we get Porto, for example, I just don't. No. I think it's just cooler and tougher to say online in the background. They're like,
hopefully those people do not watch the game with me when those games come around, because y'all would be insufferable.
Those people are never in real life. They're only like internet warriors. In real life, they'll be like, man, it's our luck. And then, we'll complain about City. So these are the same guys that will complain about City drawing like shitty teams every freaking round as they go up, especially in the group stages, but then want the toughest one against us. Which one? You can have it both ways. Like you can criticize one and then like hope for the other. But yeah, it's going to be interesting. At least whoever it is, I guess we get to talk a lot about it because we're going to find out way before it happens. So there's a lot of time.
Next Monday, right? Is the draw?
Yes, Monday is the draw. So we have We'll have like 2 months to chew that over.
3 months of fat to chew on that one. God,
and we're going to watch every score. Like, they lost in the league this week and stuff like that.
Find out what beluga whale picked in the.
So bigger fish to fry soon. Spurs. We'll talk a lot about it tomorrow. We'll do almost like a mini pre-match as we look at headlines as well. Most of the headlines were all Champions League related and more like the injury related than anything else from the, like we talked about Chilwell and Son and stuff like that. So we address those. It's a team that has a lot of injuries. I think we're probably getting them in the best spots. I guess you could say the same about us, but their injuries are fresher, whereas we're almost used to having everybody out at the stage. So I think that's going to be the good thing. And it's almost looks like they're a team that's kind of stuttering a little bit along the way, whereas I don't know where the hell we're at, actually. One week we look like we're on the way up.
It's two wounded animals, and which one is going to get knocked into the ravine?
That's a good analogy, actually. Let's hope it's not us, but we'll dissect the hell out of that tomorrow. I'll go get a second Daffy Duck coffee over here and then continue today. No podcast tonight. So the Thursday podcast is not going to be live tonight. So adjust your schedules accordingly. Couple of like scheduling conflicts, and instead of like just watching microphones but nobody behind them, we figured we wouldn't do the Thursday podcast. So, but we'll be back tomorrow with Trevor over here, and I think Rami is going to be joining us as well, and then we'll do a quick preview. Take it easy, everybody. We'll see you guys tomorrow.